Hey guys, thanks for coming to check out this video. Today I'm going to show you how I draw my 5 favorite flowers. I'm going to show you how to do them in pen and then colored pencil and then watercolor as well. I'm doing these in my sketchbook, but these are great for in your bullet journal. So let's go and check them out now. I hope you enjoy. So I'm starting off just with my watercolor art sketchbook by Moleskine, my cup of tea of course, and the pencil and pens that I'm going to use, which are Pigma Micron pens in 005 and a 03. So the first flower is a sunflower. That is one of my favorite flowers. I think they're very bright and happy and they're a lot of fun to draw. I love to draw them on this angle so that you see the petals curling all these different ways. I just think it makes it a lot more interesting rather than your straight on sort of look, which can sometimes look a bit flat. So wherever I can, I always try and get my flowers to be on a slight angle. It just makes them look a lot more interesting in the final piece. I always start with my pencil first. I lay out all the shapes and the lines where they're going to go so that I know exactly where my marker is going to go when I move on to that step. This next flower that I'm drawing right now is the peony. Very similar to a rose, but I personally just like them a lot more. They come in all beautiful colors and they're very, very feminine and have a lot of petals. So it can be challenging to draw sometimes, but if you stick to this kind of way of drawing it, it's fairly simple once you get the hang of it. You're just kind of working that shape around in the center and just imagining those petals folding in on each other until they get to the outside where they flip out. I'm moving on to another flower now, which is the carnation. Once again, this is a really simple one to achieve because you're basically just doing petals around in a spiral shape, but you're just always adding a very rough edge, like a wriggly line as the edge of each petal. And then to build dimension in all of these flowers, when I'm just using fine liners, I love to add a lot of strokes, all going in the same direction that the petal travels in. So you're making it seem like there's these lines in it and folds and wrinkles, which would be in the petals themselves. Now here, the next flower that I'm drawing is a poppy, and I'm sorry I lost the footage of this one, but I'm doing the same technique as I have done across them, using those strokes to give shade, and I'm also adding a thicker stroke to the right hand side of each of the petals. What I love about poppies is they've got that real cup-like shape to the petals, so that was really fun to draw. And then the final flower is the hydrangea. Now this is definitely my favorite flower. Love to draw these and I love to paint them in watercolor, as you'll see later on. So they're just a lot of 4 little petal diamond shaped flowers that travel around in this circular shape. So that is how I create my top 5 flowers using just fine liners. And now I'm moving on to show you how I do the exact same flowers but using colored pencils to color them in. I'm using my handy dandy Prismacolor pencils, which are a beautiful wax-based pencil that blend really nicely between colors. I use them all the time in my bullet journal, and I do a lot of other detailed figurative artwork with them as well. But for this purpose, I'm just trying to keep it quite simple, just using a couple of colors to try and get some dimension to these flowers. What's great about these kind of pencils is you can work in layers. So I always lay down my lightest color first, and then I gradually build up with the next kind of tones that I'm going to be using to shade and color the areas. So the petals were obviously in a yellow first, and then I used a darker yellow, a gray, and a slightly browny color to get some of that sunshine yellow and the variations between the petals to show up. One thing I found when I was doing my sunflower is that I needed that darkness around the edges of each petal to really separate them. It can look like a bit of a blob if you don't have that defined shadow line around the edge of each petal. So keep that in mind if you're going to try something like this. It may not be true to life, but just adding that slight darkness around the edge of each petal will separate them out and make it look a lot nicer in the end. Now moving on to the peony, I've just laid down my basis drawing using the mechanical pencil, and now this one I decided to go with a outline as an underneath layer. So I'm going to map in all those petals that I just put down, and then I'm going to color in inside those. This is a lot easier to work with because you can see exactly where your lines are going, and it gives you that defined section for each petal. So this is probably my preference to do. So you can do it the first way that I did with the sunflower without using any of the outline, but I personally prefer having this look. I mean, it looks less realistic, but I think it's quite graphic and it looks good, especially in your bullet journal when you don't need to go for that lifelike appearance. I've decided to color this peony in orange. I'm using 2 oranges, a light one, actually 3, a light one, a medium one, and a darker one. Obviously the darker one is for where all the petals laying on each other, forming a shadow. And as it gets closer to the center where it's really bunched up in that middle bit, I'm going to put a lot more darkness in there. And I think I add some brown as well, just to try and set that back, so making it more shadowed in the center. Now for the carnation, I'm once again starting with that outline first, and then I'm coloring this one in pink tones. So I think I only use 2 colors here, which is a light pink and a dark pink. And then I use a white just to blend the 2 colors together to make it look a bit smoother. Otherwise you can see the tooth of the paper come through and it looks a bit rough. Whereas if you smooth it out with the white, it makes it all like a nice smooth texture. Now onto the poppy, which you can actually see me drawing a bit better in this vision. And then I'm coloring this one in red, because poppies are red, obviously. But because it's a darker color, it is hard to get a bit of contrast with this guy. So I've tried adding as much darkness as possible to set those petals to make them look like they're sitting on top of the ones beneath. And I just kept darkening it up with a dark brown and a maroon, and then darkening that center bit with a bit of a rich black. And now for my favorite, which is the hydrangea. And like I said before, they're these awesome diamond shaped petals in lots of little flowers. So I went in and drew those in with the dark pencil first, like a dark blue, bluey purple I'd call it, and then go in with the lighter ones to separate them out. I absolutely love this color so much. I think it really complements the rest of these, like the shades of these colors just look heavenly to me. And so yeah, now I'm just darkening all the bits beneath those flowers to give it some depth. And now we are moving on to the final arrangement, which are watercolor versions of these flowers. If you've watched my videos before, you probably know that I adore watercolor, and this is no different. This was my favorite part of doing this video, doing the watercolor sections. I just think they're so much fun. But what I did notice is that I needed to go back and forth between different flowers. I couldn't just focus on the one flower because I needed each individual petal to dry before I put on to the next petal, because otherwise with watercolor they just bleed together. So I really wanted that separation of each petal. So I decided to work consecutively between the 2 flowers. When one part was dry, I'd move on to the other side, and while waiting for that one to dry, move back and forth, and so on. So if it's a bit hard to follow, I do apologize, but it's the best way to do it if you're going to do it at home as well. You can work on multiple flowers as you're building your little bouquet of love. Now you might see me using a colored pencil here to start my basis drawing off. I do that on my watercolor drawings because it means you don't see the lead pencil coming through, and it just kind of blends in with whatever color you're going to work on. So the pencils I'm using are Prismacolor Erase pencils, or just color erase, I think they're called. And so they are erasable mostly, but they're good to lay down your line with because you don't see them there at the end, which is gold. And so that's the carnation that I'm starting with the pink, and just using quite a lot of water into it so that it's a very faint pink. And then I'm also using the red on the poppy next to it. And once again, just waiting for those petals to dry by going between the 2 flowers. And now I'm adding in the 5th flower because I couldn't be bothered waiting. I'm even using a hairdryer in the background here as well. But yes, I've mapped in my blue using a purple pencil for the hydrangea. And I'm just dabbing in all the center of those petals using a darkish purpley blue. Oh, here's the hairdryer action for you. and making sure to add in some darker colors and where the shadows would be hitting. And then it's like I saved my favorite till lucky last. This is where the hydrangea just makes me feel so happy. You put these dark tones in between all those flowers and it makes it look like you've added this real depth to create this sphere-like shape. So I think it looks awesome, and it makes me just want to touch that hydrangea and give it a little squish. And now I'm adding in some final touches using a white gel pen just on that sunflower, and then that's finished. And now I'm actually going to show you how I would use these in forming them around like a banner, like a title for in your bullet journal. So I often will put a box for my header, and then I'll fill out the outside with a floral arrangement, some coming in front of the box and some going behind. And once you've put the main flowers that you want in your arrangement in their place, you just fill out the edges with extra leaves and berries. I've added some eucalyptus leaves because I'm obsessed with those, and just kind of spread it out as far as you'd like to go to make it look attractive for you. And I'm really happy with the arrangement of this one. So I wasn't sure whether to do it in color or stick to the black and white. But then I was so in love with the hydrangea that I thought I'd have to do it again. So I ended up doing some watercolor, just a little pop of red down the bottom on the poppy and a pop of blue for the hydrangea in the top left. And you would have seen this already because I have used it as the thumbnail for this video. And then I'm going to write in there as an example for where you could write your headers if you were using this in a bullet journal spread. So I hope you enjoyed watching me create these 5 favorite flowers. Let me know if you have a favorite that was in this setup, or if you have another favorite that you'd like to see in a future video. I will see you next week, and if you want to watch some more of my stuff, I'll leave a link down to the playlist of my bullet journal ideas in the description box below. Thanks for watching. Bye.